Commander Juniper Hayes stood at the edge of her cornfield, watching the strange lights dance across the evening sky. The annual Harvest Festival was in full swing in the small farming community of New Eden, but something felt different this year. The usual warm glow of paper lanterns was overshadowed by an ethereal blue shimmer that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the Earth's rotation. As head of the Agricultural Defense Force, Juniper had seen her share of unusual phenomena, but nothing quite like this. Her hand instinctively moved to the communication device on her belt, fingers brushing against the cool metal as she debated whether to alert headquarters. The decision was made for her when a crystalline structure materialized in the middle of her prized pumpkin patch. It wasn't the aggressive arrival she'd been trained to expect from first contact scenarios. Instead, the vessel, if that's what it was, seemed to grow from the ground like a transparent seed reaching toward the stars. A figure emerged, tall and graceful, with iridescent skin that shifted colors like the northern lights. Its form was vaguely humanoid, but with multiple appendages that moved with liquid grace. Juniper's military training urged her to draw her weapon, but her farmer's intuition told her to wait. "Welcome to Earth," she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You've arrived during our harvest festival." The being turned toward her, revealing fascinating compound eyes that reflected the moonlight. When it spoke, its voice was like wind through wheat stalks. "I am Botanical Explorer Nyxis of the Celestial Gardens. We detected your agricultural resonance patterns from 3-star systems away." Juniper blinked, trying to process this information. Agricultural resonance patterns. "Your plants sing," Nyxis explained, gesturing with one of their upper appendages toward the surrounding fields. "Each species has its own melody, but yours harmonize in ways we've never encountered before." As if to demonstrate, Nyxis produced a small device that emitted a soft humming. The surrounding crops swayed in response, despite the complete absence of wind. The pumpkins in particular seemed to glow from within, their vines reaching toward the alien visitor like children greeting an old friend. "We've spent millennia perfecting our own agricultural techniques," Nyxis continued, "but we've never achieved this level of symbiosis with our crops. Your species has a gift we don't fully understand." Juniper smiled, years of farming wisdom, passed down through generations, suddenly taking on new meaning. "Maybe we could learn from each other. Our festival celebrates not just the harvest, but the sharing of knowledge and resources among communities." A group of curious villagers had begun to gather at the edge of the field, their festival lanterns creating a warm backdrop to this historic moment. Rather than panic, they watched in wonder as Nyxis approached them, the alien's skin now glowing with patterns that matched their lanterns. "Your offer is most welcome," Nyxis responded, producing what appeared to be seeds from a compartment in their environmental suit. They were unlike anything Juniper had ever seen, crystalline structures that pulsed with their own inner light. "We bring our own harvest to share." As the night progressed, the Harvest Festival transformed into something entirely new. Tables that had been laden with traditional earth crops now featured an extraordinary blend of terrestrial and alien produce. Children marveled at floating fruits that changed flavor with each bite, while elderly farmers engaged in passionate discussions with Nyxis about crop rotation techniques that spanned galaxies. Juniper watched it all unfold, her initial fear replaced by a profound sense of possibility. In all her years of service, she'd prepared for first contact to be a moment of crisis. Instead, it had become a celebration of the one thing that united all species, the fundamental need to grow, harvest, and share the bounty of their worlds. The morning would bring protocols, diplomats, and the weight of official first contact procedures. But for now, under the light of Earth's moon and the glow of alien agriculture, humanity's first interstellar relationship was being cultivated in the most fitting way possible, through the sharing of a harvest feast. In her pocket, Juniper's communication device buzzed repeatedly with urgent messages from headquarters. She silenced it without looking. Some moments were too important to be interrupted by bureaucracy. Besides, she thought with a smile watching Nyxis teach a group of children how to make their pumpkins glow. Sometimes the best diplomatic relations grew from the simplest seeds. The diplomatic wing of New Eden's agricultural center buzzed with tension. 2 weeks after first contact, what had started as a promising cultural exchange was teetering on the brink of disaster. Commander Juniper Hayes stood before a holographic display showing the sacred grove of ancestors, where generations of Earth's most important crop varieties had been preserved. Now, nearly a third of those carefully tended plants had been converted into something entirely alien. Across the room, botanical explorer Nyxus's skin had turned a deep indigo, a sign of distress that Juniper had quickly learned to recognize. Next to them stood Professor Raj Patel, Earth's leading expert in agricultural genetics, who had arrived 3 days ago when the situation first began to escalate. "With all due respect," Raj said, his usually calm voice tight with concern, "you can't simply transform centuries of carefully preserved genetic material without consultation. These plants represent humanity's agricultural heritage." Nyxus's appendages moved in complex patterns that their translator struggled to keep up with. "We meant no offense. We observed that these specimens were being maintained in an inefficient state. Our modifications have improved their resilience by 300% and increased their nutritional value exponentially." "That's not the point," Juniper interjected, trying to bridge the growing divide between the two perspectives. "These plants are more than just genetic material. They're our history, our culture. Some of these varieties were carried across oceans by our ancestors, preserved through famines and wars." The alien botanist's skin shifted to a questioning shade of green-gold. "But isn't improvement the goal of preservation? We assumed that maintaining these specimens meant you wished to perfect them." Before anyone could respond, a new alert flashed across the holographic display. In the grove, the modified plants had begun to emit a strange resonance that was affecting the remaining original specimens. The signal matched the agricultural resonance patterns that had first drawn the aliens to Earth. "They're singing," Nyxus explained, their tone suddenly urgent. "But the harmony is wrong. The modified plants are trying to communicate with their original variants, but the biological languages are too different." Professor Patel rushed to his monitoring equipment. "The unmodified plants are showing signs of stress. Their cellular structure is beginning to break down in response to the signal." Juniper watched in horror as the readings confirmed what they were seeing. The modified plants were unintentionally destroying their ancestors through their attempts to connect with them. It was a perfect metaphor for the current crisis. Two species trying to help each other, but lacking the fundamental understanding to do so safely. "Can you stop it?" she asked Nyxus, who was already moving toward the grove's entrance. "Yes, but I need access to our ship's harmonics database. The modified plants are using our world's biological language. I need to teach them to be silent." What followed was a desperate race against time. Nyxus worked with their ship systems, while Professor Patel attempted to shield the remaining original specimens. Juniper coordinated teams of both human and alien scientists, each bringing their unique perspectives to the crisis. As dawn broke over New Eden, the immediate danger had passed, but the incident had left its mark. In the grove, the modified plants stood as silent reminders of how easily good intentions could go awry without proper understanding. "I believe we owe you an apology," Nyxus said, their skin now a subtle shade of remorseful gray. "We were so excited by the possibility of sharing our agricultural advances that we failed to consider the deeper meaning of your preservation efforts." Professor Patel, who had spent the night analyzing the modified plants, looked up from his data tablet. "Actually, there might be something valuable to learn from this mistake. The modifications you made, while inappropriate for these specific specimens, show remarkable potential. If we could apply similar principles to new crossbreeds while preserving our heritage varieties." "A parallel program," Juniper suggested, seeing where this could lead. "We maintain our original specimens as they are, honoring their cultural significance, while creating a new research division focused on collaborative development." Nyxus's skin brightened slightly. "We could establish protocols for cultural evaluation before any modifications are attempted. Our worlds have much to learn from each other, but perhaps we need to proceed more carefully. As they discussed the path forward, Juniper realized that this crisis had taught them all something valuable. The incident had forced both species to confront their assumptions about progress and preservation, about the balance between innovation and tradition. In the grove, the modified plants stood as both a warning and a promise, a reminder that the road to understanding between different cultures would never be smooth, but that even mistakes could lead to growth if handled with wisdom and respect. Sometimes, Juniper reflected, watching human and alien scientists working side by side to stabilize the situation, the best harvests come from the fields we nearly lost. Orbital Station, Green Hope, was a marvel of human-alien cooperation, its transparent domes filled with experimental crops that glowed under the combined light of Earth's sun and artificial spectrums calibrated for alien photosynthesis. But today, those gleaming domes couldn't hide the urgency in Dr. Marcus Rodriguez's movements as he rushed through the hydroponics section, his tablet displaying increasingly worrying data. "The decay rate is accelerating," he announced to the assembled team of human and alien scientists. "We're losing both terrestrial and celestial crops to the same pathogen, but it's not behaving like any blight we've seen before." Then, the alien agricultural specialist, whose crystalline form seemed to ripple with concern, moved to examine the wilting plants. Their sensory tendrils extended toward a row of hybrid wheat that had shown such promise just days ago. Now, the once golden stalks were turning an ominous shade of purple-black. "The resonance patterns are corrupted," Venn observed, their voice carrying the musical undertones characteristic of their species. "It's as if the plants are screaming, but in a language neither of our worlds understands." Marcus nodded grimly. After the Grove incident 2 months ago, both species had developed a healthy respect for the way plants communicated. But this was different. This wasn't just miscommunication, it was corruption at the most fundamental level. "If we can't stop this," he said, pulling up a projection of the spread pattern, "both Earth and the celestial gardens will face famine within a year. The pathogen is adapting to every containment measure we attempt." Commander Juniper Hayes's voice came through the station's communication system. "The Agricultural Defense Force has quarantined all affected regions on Earth, but we're seeing the first signs of infection in the southern hemisphere. Professor Patel reports similar findings from his research station in Mumbai." Venn's crystalline form pulsed with rapid colors, their equivalent of intense thought. "There's something we're missing. The pattern of spread doesn't match either terrestrial or celestial plant diseases. It's almost as if it was designed to target both," Marcus finished, a chill running through him. "But who would have the knowledge to create something like that, and why?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Alina Volkov, a quiet botanist who had been analyzing soil samples, suddenly straightened up from her microscope. "It's not designed, it's evolved. Look at this." The team gathered around her station as she projected her findings. The pathogen showed signs of spontaneous mutation, adapting to both Earth and celestial plant biology simultaneously. It was an accident of evolution, born in the unique environment where their two agricultural systems met. "We created the perfect conditions for this," Marcus realized. "By bringing our two forms of agriculture together so quickly, we inadvertently created an evolutionary pressure cooker." Venn's color shifted to what Marcus had learned to recognize as determination. "Then, perhaps the solution lies not in fighting the evolution, but in directing it. On my world, we have techniques for guiding biological development through resonance manipulation." "Biological harmonics," Marcus mused, remembering the reports from the Grove incident. "But instead of using it to modify the plants, what if we used it to modify the pathogen itself?" What followed was a desperate race against time. While Juniper coordinated containment efforts on Earth, Marcus and Venn worked to develop a harmonic frequency that would force the pathogen to evolve in a less destructive direction. They weren't trying to kill it, they were trying to teach it a new way to live. The breakthrough came after 3 days without sleep, when Alina noticed something extraordinary in their test samples. The infected plants had started producing a new type of chemical defense, one that incorporated elements of both terrestrial and celestial biology. "The plants are learning from each other," she explained, her exhausted face lighting up with hope. "They're developing a shared immune response. We don't need to fight the pathogen. We need to help our crops communicate better so they can fight it together." The solution, when they finally implemented it, was beautiful in its elegance. Using Ven's harmonic technology and Earth's understanding of plant genetics, they created a network of resonance amplifiers that helped the infected crops share their defensive strategies across species. As the days passed, the purple-black infection began to recede. In its wake, the plants emerged stronger, having developed new defenses that neither species could have achieved alone. The crisis had forced an evolution not just in the crops, but in the way humans and aliens approached agriculture. Standing in the central dome of green hope, watching the renewed crops flourish under the combined light of Earth's sun and alien grow lamps, Marcus turned to Ven. "You know, we might have just stumbled onto something revolutionary here. This hybrid defense system could change everything we know about crop resilience." Ven's crystalline form shimmered with what Marcus had learned to recognize as joy. "Indeed. Perhaps this crisis was not just a test of our ability to solve problems together, but a glimpse of what we can achieve when we truly combine our knowledge." Above them, Earth shone blue and green through the station's dome, a reminder of all they had nearly lost, and all they stood to gain through cooperation. The crops below them pulsed with their new, shared song, a harmony that bridged the gap between worlds. The experimental greenhouse on Green Hope Station hummed with activity as Dr. Marcus Rodriguez and Ven stood before what might be their greatest achievement, or their most spectacular failure. In the center of the chamber, inside a specially designed containment field, floated a single plant unlike anything either world had ever seen. Its stem was crystalline, like the vegetation of the celestial gardens, but it pulsed with chlorophyll in a way that was distinctly Earth-like. The leaves were a complex lattice of organic and crystalline structures that seemed to shift and change as they watched. At its crown, instead of traditional flowers or fruit, there were spherical formations that glowed with their own inner light. "6 months of work," Marcus said, checking the readings on his tablet. "Everything we learned from the pathogen crisis, everything we discovered about harmonic resonance and genetic compatibility, it all led to this moment." Professor Raj Patel's voice came through the communication system, eager despite the late hour in his Mumbai lab. "The genetic stability readings are stronger than anything we've seen in previous attempts. How are the resonance patterns?" Ven's crystalline form shifted through analytical colors as they studied the plant. "The harmonics are perfect. It's speaking both languages simultaneously, but not like a translation. It's creating an entirely new biological language." The hybrid plant was their response to a challenge that had become apparent after the pathogen crisis. Both Earth and the celestial gardens needed more resilient food sources that could thrive in various environments. The solution, they hoped, was to create something entirely new, a plant that combined the best qualities of both worlds. Commander Juniper Hayes entered the chamber, her expression a mixture of awe and concern. "The Coalition Council is watching this project closely. After the Grove incident and the pathogen crisis, they're nervous about any major agricultural innovations." "This is different," Marcus assured her, though he understood the concern. "We're not modifying existing species or rushing into mass cultivation. This is controlled development of an entirely new species with safeguards at every level." As if in response to their discussion, the hybrid plant suddenly emitted a soft chime, a sound that was both musical and organic. The spherical formations at its crown began to pulse in rhythm with the sound. "Extraordinary," Ven whispered, their form resonating slightly with the plant's frequency. "It's not just surviving, it's trying to communicate with us." Elena Volkov, who had been quietly monitoring the plant's biochemical readings, suddenly straightened up. "Look at these nutrient profiles," she said, projecting her data into the air. "The fruit bodies are producing compounds that shouldn't be possible, elements of both Earth and celestial biochemistry working together to create entirely new nutrients." The implications were staggering. If successful, this hybrid species could potentially provide nutrition perfectly calibrated for both human and alien biology. More than that, it represented a true fusion of their agricultural sciences, a living bridge between their worlds. But nature, as they had learned repeatedly, had a way of surprising even the most careful scientists. As they watched, the plant's glow intensified, and its crystalline structure began to emit new frequencies, ones they hadn't predicted in their models. The harmonic resonance is expanding, Venn reported, their colors shifting rapidly. It's attempting to establish communication with the other plants in the station. Marcus moved quickly to adjust the containment field, but then paused, watching the readings carefully. Unlike the aggressive resonance that had caused problems in the grove, this communication seemed different, more like a gentle question than a forceful command. "Wait," he said, holding up a hand as Juniper reached for the emergency containment protocols. "Look at how the other plants are responding." The various earth and celestial specimens in the surrounding chambers had begun to emit their own soft harmonics, creating a complex symphony of biological communication. But instead of showing signs of stress, they appeared to be thriving, their growth rates subtly increasing. "It's not just a hybrid," Elena realized, her eyes wide as she analyzed the new data. "It's a translator. It's helping our different species of plants communicate with each other more effectively than we ever could with artificial harmonics." The implications of this discovery rippled through the scientific community on both worlds. The hybrid plant wasn't just a new food source. It was a key to understanding how biology itself could bridge the gap between different forms of life. Over the next few weeks, they carefully cultivated more specimens, each one showing the same remarkable properties. The plants became known as harmony blooms among the station's crew, a name that captured both their musical nature and their role in bringing together two very different agricultural traditions. Standing in the greenhouse one cycle, watching Earth rise through the station's dome while the harmony blooms chimed their ethereal song, Marcus turned to Venn. "You know what this means, don't you? We've created something that's greater than the sum of its parts, just like our partnership." Venn's form sparkled with what Marcus had learned was their equivalent of a smile. "Perhaps that is the greatest lesson we could learn from our plants. That true harmony doesn't come from one side changing to match the other, but from finding a way to create something new together." The harmony blooms continued their gentle song, their light casting moving shadows across the greenhouse floor, as two different species of scientists contemplated the incredible possibilities that lay ahead, not just for agriculture, but for all forms of cooperation between their worlds. 1 year after the first harmony bloom sang its ethereal song, New Eden was transformed. The small farming community that had accidentally become humanity's first contact point now hosted the inaugural intergalactic harvest celebration. Crystal spires from the celestial gardens rose alongside traditional Earth festival structures, their surfaces reflecting both moonlight and the gentle glow of floating harmony blooms. Commander Juniper Hayes stood at the podium constructed from both terrestrial wood and alien crystal, looking out over an audience that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. Humans in their festival best sat beside crystalline beings whose forms shimmered with celebratory colors. In the fields beyond, the successfully hybridized crops created patterns that looked like flowing art, their combined songs creating a subtle, pleasant harmony that filled the air. "A year ago," she began, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd, "a misunderstanding in my pumpkin patch led to the most important agricultural advancement in human history. Today, we celebrate not just a successful harvest, but a successful partnership that has changed both our worlds forever." In the front row, Dr. Marcus Rodriguez and Venn sat together, their latest achievement floating in a containment sphere between them, a new variant of harmony bloom that could adapt to almost any environment. Professor Raj Patel and Alina Volkov flanked them, their research tablets momentarily forgotten as they absorbed the historic moment. "From crisis came innovation," Juniper continued. "From confusion came understanding, and from two very different approaches to nurturing life, we created something entirely new. The harmony blooms that light our celebration tonight are more than just plants. They're a testament to what we can achieve when we grow together. As if on cue, the harmony blooms scattered throughout the celebration began to pulse with increased luminescence, their song growing slightly stronger. The alien visitors' forms rippled with appreciation, while human children laughed and tried to match the plant's musical tones with their voices. The festival grounds had been carefully designed to honor both cultures. Traditional Earth harvest games and activities took place alongside demonstrations of alien agricultural techniques. Food stalls offered dishes that combined ingredients from both worlds, created with the help of the new hybrid plants. Scientists from both species gave presentations on their latest collaborative research, while artists from Earth and the celestial gardens created works that captured the beauty of their agricultural fusion. In one corner, a group of human children were learning how to hear plant songs from a crystalline being whose form sparkled with teaching colors. Nearby, alien visitors were trying their hands at traditional Earth harvest activities like apple bobbing, their forms shifting with delight at each successful attempt. But perhaps the most important thing we've learned, Juniper said, her voice softening with emotion, is that the universe's greatest harvests come not from what we can grow in our soil, but from what we can grow in our hearts. Understanding, trust, friendship. These are crops that, once planted, can sustain civilizations. As she concluded her speech, something unexpected happened. The harmony blooms throughout the festival grounds began to emit a new harmony, one that neither species had heard before. The plants were creating their own celebration song, weaving together elements of Earth's traditional harvest melodies with the crystalline harmonics of the celestial gardens. Marcus turned to Ven, his eyes wide with wonder. Are they supposed to do that? Ven's form shimmered with joy colors. They're evolving beyond our expectations, just as our partnership has. They're showing us that true harmony isn't about following a predetermined pattern. It's about finding new ways to grow together. The celebration continued long into the night. Stories were shared, traditions explained, and new friendships formed. The fear and misunderstandings of their early encounters seemed distant now, replaced by a deep appreciation for what each species could learn from the other. As the Earth's moon rose high above the festival, casting its light on the merged celebration below, Juniper found herself back in her pumpkin patch where it all began. A year ago, she had made a choice to welcome the unknown instead of fear it. Now, watching human and alien children playing together under the glow of the harmony blooms, she knew it had been the right decision. "You seem contemplative," came Nyxus's familiar wind chime voice as the original alien visitor joined her. "Just thinking about how far we've come," Juniper replied, "and wondering where this path will lead us next." Nyxus's form shifted to show patterns that matched the starry sky above. Perhaps that's the greatest harvest of all, not knowing what will grow from the seeds we plant today. Around them, the celebration continued, a living testament to the fact that sometimes the most beautiful gardens grow in the most unexpected places. The harmony blooms sang their new song into the night, a melody that carried the promise of countless harvests to come, not just of crops, but of friendship, understanding, and possibilities that stretched as far as the stars themselves.